Okay guys, here's your screencast for Friday the 20th in creative writing. The first thing you want to do today is start with your journal response, and then we've got a couple different, like I said yesterday, experimental poems that we want to be working through today. But go ahead and pause this video if you want and work on journal response number 23 if you haven't already. 10-12 minutes. And then here's what we're on about today. If we look at the assignment sheet, what we have listed here is a cut and paste poem, and then we're looking for either a found poem or there's what I'm calling an alternate found poem. So we're looking for two different experimental types of poetry today in addition to journal number 23. So what we're doing here is we're looking at, and it says on this page here, we're working with very different types of poems. We're going to be starting by reworking a previous poem which you aren't entirely thrilled with, and then we're going to be quote-unquote finding, and we're really just going to go with one found poem today within a larger text. So that's what we're after today, so just one found poem. The cut and paste poem, now like I described yesterday in class, this typically involves like taking a hard copy, like a piece of paper that has some poetry on it, and then literally pulling out scissors and cutting it into pieces. You can do the same process, just do it electronically. The first thing that I'd have you do is copy and paste a poem from earlier in the class that you're not terribly thrilled with. You can leave the title on it if you want, say, Journal 17, or it could be from the first portfolio or whatever. It could be a metaphor poem, could be whatever you want. A poem that you just didn't love, that you thought had some potential but you just didn't love. And so what you want to do is find that poem that's stuck in this state of incompletion or that's disappointed you. Hopefully some length to it, 10, 20 lines, somewhere in that neighborhood. Maybe with some strong lines, maybe with some room for improvement. And then you want to somehow cut and paste it together. So what I have you guys do in your portfolio as you're turning it in, just go ahead and copy and paste in that original poem and then copy it again beneath there, and that's where I want you to start messing with it. You're not taking scissors to your computer, but go ahead and just copy that document down so that you have like the original poem that you didn't love, and then now the new poem that you're going to be creating, and you can go ahead and cut and paste lines in whatever you want. If you want to start by just hitting enter every 6 words or whatever, and just starting to create a bunch of fragments, mimicking the idea of actually cutting the poem apart, go ahead and do that. And then you can start just moving things around, cutting and pasting these lines around. Allow obvious lines or obvious words that stick together to stay together. Go ahead and cut wherever you think it logically makes sense. We're not just talking at stanza breaks, but wherever you think it makes sense to go ahead and cut it. Go ahead and cut it. You can leave fragments here or there. You can remove fragments altogether, just delete them. Cut around phrases that sound good, phrases in which you like the meter, phrases in which you think it works. And then go ahead and again, don't worry about the parts that are left over. Not every phrase is going to make it into the finalized piece. Rules number 3 and 4 say now you're going to take a look at these fragments and you're going to start rearranging them. Like, I don't want you to let the previous structure get in the way. Is there a line that you think would make a really good opener now that you look back on it? Is there a line that seems really strong and that you want to kind of build a portion of the poem around? Are there lines that just don't work and you just want to delete them? And again, the goal here is not to go from like a 20-line poem down to like a 4-line poem, but you want to go ahead and just rearrange the lines of your original poem and see if you can turn it into something new and interesting. And then at the end, you're going to be taping the version together, which is again the old school directions that I typically use when we use paper. So what you guys are going to be doing tomorrow is just cutting and then refleshing, if we can use this metaphor, refleshing the skeleton that you're left with. So you can modify lines so that they fit better together. You can add new lines to the piece if you think there's something that needs to be added or amended. Just go ahead and try to have fun with this. The goal is that you're trying to take an old poem that you just didn't love and trying to rework it into something that you like better, realizing there's some good lines in it and there's probably some lines you can do without. And that's what a cut and paste poem is going to be. And so again, what I want to see after your journal number 23 would be go ahead and copy and paste some old poem in. You can leave the header with it or whatever. Just call it your old cut and paste poem. And then underneath there, copy it again and go ahead and create your new cut and paste poem. And that's what we're going to be after for the first portion of class today. The next type of poetry we want to look at today, and we're only going to do one of these, it's called a found poem. I'm going to have to scroll to show you this one, I guess. But what you do here is typically we use magazines. We'd go through magazines, and so if you have a magazine that you want to use, you can. But what you do is you need like an article that exists, or a chunk of writing that exists on a single page. This can't be like multiple pages of article. It has to be a single page of text. And what you do with a found poem, I'm going to show you the example and then I'll walk you through it, is you're going to like box out either words or phrases that you think are kind of interesting, and then what you do is you kind of connect these words or phrases. It becomes a very fragmented, very choppy type of poetry, but that's what it's supposed to be. So these words or phrases, you connect them so that it turns into a choppy type of poem. And so it looks like this. The example that we have here reads, living standards dependent on high levels of decline in global security will ever more heavily long for a future opposed to rivalry. Living standards dependent on high levels of decline in global security will ever more heavily long for a future opposed to rivalry. It's interesting. I mean, it's choppy, it's fragmented, there's a lot that we don't understand about it. But again, it's an interesting way to find a poem in a chunk of text. It has to be a single sheet of text, and you just are boxing in words or phrases and then connecting them so that we know how to read it, and then you just hatch out the rest of it. So if you want to grab a magazine, find an article or two, and play with this, you can go ahead and do it. It has to be a single page. If you're going to use an actual page out of a magazine, I'm going to need you, just think about this for a second, I'm going to need you to go ahead and like take a picture of it with your phone and upload that image so that we can see what it is you did. But you can go ahead and, again, rule number 2, locate words or phrases that grab your attention, circle them, box them in, connect the words or phrases in a unique manner to make a poetic whole. In this one, you're not really adding text to it, but you want to just use the text that's there in front of you, and you want to indicate the order in which we're supposed to read it, and then you crosshatch or in some other manner remove the extra words, the words that you don't want to be a part of your poem. If you don't want to do this with an actual magazine, maybe you copy and paste like a page of an article in, but I think that gets a little complicated personally. This is easier if you just use like a Sharpie and you go ahead and just put boxes around certain words and then tell us how you want to read it and cross out everything else. The other type of found poem, and this one's brand new to me, Mr. Laurie shared this with me earlier this semester, so I'm going to share it with you guys. It's called an alternate found poem, and if you look at this website here, www.writersdigest.com/writebetterpoetry/golden. It's called the Golden Shovel Poetic Form. If you just Google that, you'll probably find this, or you can copy and paste that URL in. But this Golden Shovel Form was created by this gentleman named Terrence Hayes, and here's the rules. It's based off this poem. It's called, there's a poem by Gwendolyn Brooks, one of her really, really famous ones, called We Real Cool. And the subtitle of it, or the title is basically, 7 pool players at the Golden Shovel. And so it's based off of a Gwendolyn Brooks poem. And here's what you do then. You take a line. And so this is, if you don't want to do the found poem that's using a magazine, you can do this. Take a line from a poem that you admire. A line, or in this case, the guy actually uses the entire poem because Gwendolyn Brooks' We Real Cool is a very short poem. But you can do this by just looking at a chunk of poetry and taking a line out of a chunk of poetry. The Road Not Taken that we looked at by Robert Frost, you could just say like, and I shall be telling this with a sigh, which would be somewhere in the neighborhood of like 8 lines long is what your poem's going to be. The gist of this is that for each word in the line or each word in the stanza that you're using, that becomes an end word in a line of poetry that you're going to be creating. And so what that means, and I'll kind of walk you through this, but if you have at the bottom here, if you pull a line with 6 words, then your poem's going to be 6 lines long. If you pull a line or a stanza that has 24 words, well, then your poem becomes 24 lines long. And so don't pick a gigantic poem here. You want to pick a line or 2, you want to pick a stanza, and it would be a well-known line or 2, a well-known stanza. And what you want to do is then use each word in the line or the lines as an end word in your poem. Keep those end words in order. And then at some point in the title, you want to give credit to the poet who originally wrote it. This new poem, it doesn't have to be about the same subject at all. I mean, if you look at found poetry, it's, you know, it's really disjointed. It's really potentially fragmented. All you're doing is mimicking their poem with your end words. And so an example looks like this. This is from, it's called 1991. It's a found poem example. And if you just pause here, this is based off of, this is one of those golden shovel techniques by this Terrence, what was his name? Terrence Hayes. And this is based off of We Real Cool by Gwendolyn Brooks. You can read the poem, her original poem right here. We real cool. We left school. We lurk late. We strike straight. We sing sin. We thin gin. And there's a little bit of a glitch there. We sing, or we jazz June. We die soon. And so what he's done here is taken her entire poem and caused it to be the last part of each line. Now he's gotten even really creative here, where the poem reads, we real cool, and so real, he's made a part of the word ethereal. There's other ones like that where, for instance, you know, lurk, he's turned into lurking. Straight, he's turned into straightened here with hyphens. Sing, he's turned into singular. Die, he's turned into diet at the bottom. But if you just read the last line of each, or the last word of each line, the end of each line, that's going to be Gwendolyn Brooks's The Golden Shovel. 7 players playing pool at the Golden Shovel. We real cool. And so, again, a famous poem that he would give her credit for. But his poem, if you read it, and I don't think I'm going to read the entire thing to you, into the tented city we go, weakened by the fire's ethereal afterglow, born lost and cooler than heartache. It's not really at all about what she wrote about, but it's an interesting technique in which you're taking another person's work and you're then creating something of your own based upon it. And so your options then, start with the cut and paste poem. Again, a poem that's not happy to you, that you're going to, using a computer or otherwise, just cut apart and try to recreate something different. Take the new version, treat it as a skeleton to be refleshed. The second thing you're going to do today is a found poem, which either looks like this, based on you having a magazine that you want to mark up, or potentially a found poem that looks like this. So those are your options today. I hope you can enjoy it. Have a great rest of your day, and thanks so much for your time.